Hi, everyone. This is Mark.
And I'm Mike.
And I'm Jeff, and you're listening to What Do We Know?
Whenever I answer the phone, I'm like, hello.
What pissed you off?
It's a great argument to have.
I love my mom, but I think she's half crazy for doing that.
How dare you?
Do you work with your girlfriend, Mark? Or your wife, Mark?
I keep them separated. Sometimes I call people, they don't answer the phone. I'm like,
Wrong number, click.
Well, he's not that smart. Sometimes he sounds like he knows what he's doing.
yeah.
Go.
Therefore, you're an ass, and I don't want to talk to you anymore.
I still need my time.
Man, I'm such an ass.
For sure.
Only the best.
So, I mean,
Oh, God.
So the lights, can you see the green screen back there?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually had it set up behind me, so I could have actually green screened this while we recorded it. But
Mark and I talked about that before you got here, actually.
Yeah.
yeah.
We said it'd be awesome if one of these days we just started recording and weird stuff started happening behind you. On your green screen.
Well, that was one of the. This would be a fun topic to talk about. But that's one of the things I really like about the show. You guys watch Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah.
Back in the day, I don't know, or still
Recording?
like they rebooted
I think
it.
it's still
They
on.
rebooted it with some chick.
Yeah, there's a new
hosting
host
or something like that, and Drew Carey's.
Who? I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh man, I don't remember her name. Yeah, it's relatively like in the last year, I want to say they did, and I watched one of the initial episodes because Drew Carey was back for like a guest type appearance because he used to be the latest host, but he actually wasn't nearly as funny, and everybody was making fun of him because they said, "Drew, you're no longer funny now that you're skinny." Because he's lost all that weight.
Wait. To be honest, was Drew Carey ever funny on that show?
Yeah, dude, I like Drew Carey. I love Drew Carey.
No, Drew Carey's show, I thought he was hilarious. On Whose Line Is It Anyways, he was always the worst person on
He
there.
was definitely the worst person on, which is why it made it great that he was the host and was only in like one or two of the sets.
Right.
Colin Mockery and Ryan Stiles are two of the funniest people I have ever seen. Granted,
everybody on that show is very good.
Well, and
you never really saw it was bad.
Except for Drew Carey.
What's the guy who does Let's Make a Deal Now? What's his name? Wayne Brady.
Yeah.
Lyrical genius. I mean, musical genius. That man is awesome in so many other ways, but I still can't top like Ryan Stiles and Colin Mockery together when they do their when they do props or not props, excuse me, the one where they're the TV pitchmen and they have the box of like random props and they just grab something out and put it on the table and they have to talk about it like right when they pull it out, not knowing what it is. So that stuff was so freaking funny. But I bring this up because of the fact of they had a green screen one. And for those listening, you can't see behind me, but they were talking about the fact that I have a green screen now, and they were like, "What is that for, Jeff? Are you making porns at your house, or pornos at your house?" I guess it would be.
Yes.
But
Yes.
They had the one where there were news reporters were talking to him on scene, and all he was doing was standing in front of a green screen, and he was supposed to be deducing what was happening behind him based on the questions that they were asking, like watching like the thing on the green screen. I thought that was hilarious. I would love to do stuff like that with people. I think it'd be a lot of fun. I wouldn't be as good at it.
We should try to work that into the podcast somehow.
Yeah, I don't know if it would work if there's no visual.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm just saying, green screens, they don't have much point.
I do record these things with the video. We could always do video at some point. It just makes it much more difficult to edit.
All right, so I wanted to, I think a lot of people probably listening to this have watched Jeff's video about, a YouTube video about Ebola. However, I did want to talk to Jeff about
Ebola, probably. And I will tell you though that some of my viewpoints since that video was made and released have changed based on new information and new stuff that's happened. At the time, completely valid. Okay, but I have changed some.
Let's talk about that.
On
what exactly has changed?
Initially, one of the main things is I was very mad that people were. I'm still actually very mad at this. I don't agree that that's the point. But I made a comment about how if you're somebody who happens to take care of somebody with Ebola in America, that everybody's mad that this nurse flew on an airplane and how dare she and blah, blah, blah. And I said that you shouldn't have to put your life on hold for 21 days because you did that in the line of work and thought you were taking all the precautions of safety and this and that. However, now that it's actually spreading a little bit more, like with this doctor in New York and things like that, and New York and New Jersey are putting in like mandatory 21-day quarantines for people coming over from West Africa, which I find interesting. I'm curious how they're going to do that. I'm a little bit more okay with having a quarantine, but these people need to know this up front before they start taking care of an Ebola patient. It needs to be like a voluntary thing of, if you step up to the plate and you do this, you have to be quarantined for the next 21 days.
Well, there becomes an issue then, isn't it? When people who would volunteer to help fight Ebola now see this huge, detriment for actually volunteering or helping or fighting Ebola.
On NPR this morning, I heard them talking specifically about that. Like, people no longer want to go over to West Africa and volunteer and help, and that's what's the only thing that's really driving even giving them some care, they said, is like the amount of volunteers that they have that are willing to go do that. Right. And now that they're implementing mandatory like 21-day quarantines when you get back, they said you're going to have less people willing to volunteer because they not only the time that they're volunteering for, plus an additional 3 weeks of like no pay, that they're just sitting there quarantined somewhere, that they're going to lose all this volunteer support. And yes, it causes a huge problem.
And I'm glad you brought this up, because that is exactly what I was going to kind of call you to task on, was how I feel like it's more that we were not prepared for all the minute details of this disease. I think there was some. What's that?
I still don't think we are.
Okay, so
right, I absolutely agree with you. So, the 21-day mandatory quarantine, maybe 21 days. I mean, I understand that's like the absolute outer limit of the disease's infectious period. So maybe that's kind of overdoing it. But in America, compared to third world countries, are we really to be like super scared of this disease? We're not, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing I wanted to talk about, is we talk about the safety procedures and how we should quarantine and what laws should be passed and how prepared we are. I think what we're missing the point is how not contagious Ebola is, because it is.
No. This is where you're going to get a medical professional's opinion completely differing from you.
Really?
What do you mean how contagious it is? You had 2 nurses that took care of a patient that had Ebola following excessively over the limit precautions for a contact precaution, droplet precaution disease. They're concerned that she got it because part of her neck was exposed.
Right. We don't know.
That is way beyond this is not that contagious. That's the problem, is I think this thing is way more contagious than they ever originally thought it was.
It's contagious when you're showing a high symptom. So it's not like when you're not showing symptoms. Well, no. It's
yes,
just
you have to be symptomatic for it to be contagious. You don't have to have high symptoms.
Right. But I mean, basically, you have to be sick and visibly sick. It's not like if you touch someone who has Ebola, you're going to get it automatically. There's also many, many other diseases that are more highly contagious that we should be more concerned about. I think Ebola.
Go on. Which one?
Tuberculosis. That kills a lot.
It's an airborne precaution disease. It is contagious, but we know if I put on a respiratory mask and a 95 respiratory mask, I'm not going to contract tuberculosis by touching you.
How many people die from
contract or have a high possibility of contracting Ebola by touching you?
And I think another thing that people get wrong is there is the idea that there is no cure for Ebola. Doesn't mean that people will automatically die if they get Ebola.
You are correct.
Well,
do you know the percentage of people who do?
I was going to say,
with 60%,
aren't we
but also, I think that's misleading because where do most people die from Ebola?
On Earth.
Yes, on Earth. I was going to say in West Africa, the people who die from Ebola are being treated in maybe not the best hospitals or that's best equipped. One of the big problems with Ebola is that you get severe diarrhea and throwing up and sweats and stuff like that. Therefore, you need to be highly you have to get your fluids. Basically, in the Western hospitals that we have, we're better equipped to help people with Ebola, survive Ebola.
That was going to be exactly my point, was how many people in America who have contracted it, and granted there hasn't been that many at this point, but how many of them have died? Especially when you want to compare that to the people in West Africa who have contracted the disease and died. It's not even close.
I do not disagree with the fact that we have better equipment and medical care to be able to treat people, especially when it's a small number of people.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this one of the greatest cases in human history where the media just wants to feed people fear because that's what they watch on TV, when a healthy dose of knowledge on the subject would save countless lives in America because we have the medications, we have the ability, and all it takes is just protecting yourself in a smart way to make sure that this thing doesn't spread. But all you see on TV is how this is going to be the next great epidemic in America.
Oh, do I think that media is pushing fear? For sure. Do I think that the fear the media is pushing is warranted? Not necessarily, no. However, on the opposite side of Mark's point, I think Mark looks at it as a nil subject. He's like, Ebola, come on, it's absolutely nothing. Whereas I'm not, I won't get on that bandwagon by any stretch of the imagination. Because here's the deal, we do have very confined cases currently in America. Who knows what's going to happen with this guy in New York who was walking around for multiple days, potentially with his fever or whatnot. Like, nobody really knows that one. That one's brand new as of now in the recording of this podcast, a brand new situation. But if it does get to the point where, let's say he didn't seek help and all of a sudden he got a bunch of people sick around him and the numbers kind of exponentially increased from him, he gets 5 people infected. The fact that there is no official cure for this thing as of now, with the death rate as high as it is, granted in third world countries, the possibility of an epidemic exists. But the possibility of an epidemic exists for a lot of different things. So I'm not sitting there trying to fear monger and everything like the media does. But this is, I still believe this is a very scary situation. No, it's something without a high percentage known.
Without medicine to cure. I mean, you can.
Yes, the other cure is 40% of you may be cured. The other 60% will die.
Okay, so let's say in West Africa, like I said, they don't have the medical care for the most of the people who are actually infected with Ebola. 40% survive without any medicine or even maybe limited hospital treatment, and that's one of the reasons why the Ebola outbreak is spreading as much as it did. But let's be realistic. The chances of anybody in America getting Ebola is extremely low. The percentage of people...
Yes, I completely agree with you there.
If we did have an outbreak in America, we would be able to isolate it a lot faster than that of West Africa. The people who do get sick would be able to be quarantined and get proper treatment. Most of that treatment would be in the hospitals and not in home care. The spread from families, one person being sick to the next person being sick, would be greatly diminished with the way we treat people who are sick in America versus that in West Africa. So when you combine all the social factors with the medical factors, I think that the chances of an Ebola outbreak in America is almost zero.
How many American citizens have died from Ebola thus far?
I think one.
Was that guy an American citizen, actually? Was he an American
I don't know.
citizen?
We'll have to look that up. I don't think it's the odds of it becoming an epidemic in America, I think, are almost to none.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't be cautious about it, but when we talk about things that people die from in America, Ebola would be like one of the very bottom things on our list that we should be worried about. People die from flu a lot more. People die from STDs a lot more.
Somebody apparently died of Ebola on July 29th. Some other
Right.
in America, an American citizen.
Well, also, this isn't the first Ebola outbreak. The movie Outbreak
Well,
was, I think, based on that Ebola, on the Ebola virus.
It was. They called it Motaba.
Yeah.
Motaba. Yeah, I was going to say. However, I have a feeling that a good chunk, at least, of the infections in West Africa are due to mishandling of the bodies after death. Actually, I don't even have a feeling. I know that to be correct based on the information, that I've heard. So I think just due to, our awareness, information on the topic, it's way less likely to spread over here than over there, just based on.
That's where my concern comes in. Because do I really think this is going to become something that actually is the next big outbreak in America? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I am fearful that if it does, it's going to be deadly. I don't think it's going to necessarily be as easily controlled as you guys seem to think it might be, because of the fact of we have so much knowledge. It's on everybody's radar. How did two nurses still contract it dealing with this patient when they were put through those so rigorous of precautions? And I know there's the big debates that they weren't prepared enough, blah, blah, blah. I see a whole different side of that being in the healthcare industry, and that's where I get really concerned is these people, I'm sure, knowing the extents and craziness that this havoc that this disease can cause.
Right.
You don't think that they did everything in their power to protect themselves against the known precautions that it is to be, as well as more, and they still got it.
So we don't exactly know the exact cause of them getting it, and it could have been
it's very unfortunate that we don't know the exact cause.
But it could be just a case of cross-contamination where they did every single thing precaution-wise correctly, but then when they're taking off their clothes, it touched something.
And that's my point. If it's that easy,
yeah, but you could get get the flu virus by basically someone touching a door handle, and then 2 days later, someone touched that same door handle.
True. The difference is the flu virus isn't as high probability of a killer like Ebola is. That's where my point is at. You can spend a lot of things through the exact same means.
Like when he landed in Dallas and the nurses got it, like at that point in time, try to think back, Jeff, because you are a nurse in an emergency room. Mm-hmm. I mean, what was your level of awareness of the thing? I mean,
when that happened, we had a relatively.
You knew that Ebola was kind of, really peaking over in West Africa, and I know you had some knowledge of it. But I mean, would you say you were 100% ready to take on an Ebola patient at that point?
I don't think anybody's 100% ready to take on an Ebola patient.
That's exactly right.
Ever.
I could not agree with you more. So when you talk about these two nurses, it's a tragedy that they got it. But I think in any given situation like this, you're going to have people who, are just unprepared for this type of situation, no matter how much you think you're prepared.
So are you saying that we should be worried or shouldn't be worried?
I'm saying that we really shouldn't be worried. You got to remember, I work in an industry, in an area where it's very, if it comes to America, this is a likely place it could come through in Washington, D.C.
Well,
Michigan,
it already did.
The middle of Michigan, less likely that that's going to be the first contact with somebody. But I mean, at the same time, with a 21-day incubation period, I don't know what they call it, but with a 21-day period, if somebody was from Michigan who was volunteering over there and made it back to Michigan, I guess it could happen just the same. The biggest problem that I have is we don't have the facts of this. You're alluding to, Mark, and I'm sure this is from media hype because that's the only information that we have. It could have been as easy as cross-contamination taking off her clothes, which is what they called the breach in protocol that they never explained what this breach in protocol was that she got Ebola from. And that's something I have a major problem with. You're going to blame it on this nurse and say there was a breach in protocol, but you didn't tell us what the breach in protocol was. Therefore, none of us know what went wrong. Why did it spread? Is it because she did something stupid and it needs to be like, we need to be less concerned, especially as medical workers, that, oh, she did something stupid? Or is it literally like it's that easy to accidentally cross-contaminate?
Because, I mean, we don't know if maybe she just licked the patient and maybe that's how it's
I mean, it's extremely valid. It's a little far-fetched, but extremely valid. I mean, maybe she found him attractive and had sex with him. I mean, we have absolutely zero idea.
Just so everyone also knows, you should practice safe sex anyways. But people who actually survive Ebola, males actually carry the virus in their sperm for like several weeks afterwards. So they might not have any symptoms, but
Really?
it could be an STD.
That I didn't know.
Wow.
That's
I didn't know that either.
so
Right.
no sex with the doctor who was cured.
Right. Well, actually, because that's what they do in West Africa is after someone who actually is cured-ish of Ebola, they send the males with condoms and stuff to practice safe sex so they don't spread the virus that way.
Look at Mark dropping knowledge on us.
But anyways, Mike, you were about to get into.
I just want to say, don't you kind of feel like this is sort of like everything in America where,
Overhyped.
yeah, it's overhyped and we're going to gather information on this over time. And yeah, there's going to be some casualties, but
You can't
we're gonna
overhype
figure
something
out-
that has a czar.
Can I just mention something?
Right? Is it about the Ebola czar? Because I want to mention him for a minute too. What? Go on.
I've been watching CNN and all these places going crazy about this Ebola virus. Shepard Smith from Fox News has the most reasonable approach I have seen to the Ebola virus. He has given out facts. He has been basically telling people they're overhyping it. There's nothing to worry. They have very little to worry about in America. He talks about how the virus can be spread. It's just amazing. Shepard Smith, of all people, really taking the lead on.
I was going to say that
being
totally
reasonable.
shocked me. When you said Shepard Smith, I expected you to just go off killing the guy about something he said.
Yeah, and it's just like, sometimes you get some people who are very reasonable about certain subjects. And I just want to give them mad props for that.
So what I want to get into though is what the hell is an Ebola czar?
It's the czar of Ebola.
Yeah.
It's just somebody who's in charge of making sure it doesn't get out of control.
Well,
So
what we
a
have,
non-medical professional, political figure to make sure Ebola doesn't get out of control.
well,
We have a Democratic president. That makes sense to him.
what aren't we missing? Like what do you call it? Cabinet for like health. Like there isn't an assigned.
The Surgeon General. We
Yeah.
actually don't have a Surgeon General right now.
Yeah, that's
We
what
have
I'm
an
saying.
acting. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have an acting
If-
Surgeon General. Who?
If only there was a Center for Disease Control or something that could keep tabs on this.
Well, because it has to be basically. Doesn't the Senate or Congress have to approve the cabinet member? I'm not exactly sure
How
how.
do we not have a Surgeon General at this point?
I don't know. And, again, going back to like the whole Democrat in office thing, like that's totally surprising because they just want to stock the government with as many people as they can put on the payroll.
Well, I think it has to be approved, and therefore, what's going on in Congress right now, it probably just wouldn't happen. So they just never put on the table.
Do you think the Ebola
Maybe.
czar gets a pay increase?
Probably.
I think they should give the person who's the Ebola czar Ebola, but then that would make it a real priority in their life. They're like,
His office was 3
we
weeks,
really-
and
we really need the cure.
Well, actually, Ebola was kind of a weird thing because it took like a 30-year hiatus or something like that.
Right.
Like they think it's caused by fruit bats or,
Can be spread, yeah.
but yeah, well, it's spread by like those bats or whatever. But for some reason, there was not a documented case in 25 or 30 years or something like that. It's very unusual for a disease like that to take a break.
No,
it's
not actually.
It's like smallpox.
Yeah, smallpox was huge, and then it went away, and now it's eradicated now through vaccines. I'm pretty sure.
There's no smallpox vaccine.
It's one of the few diseases that we actually eliminated. I think there was smallpox and something else.
Maybe there is a smallpox vaccine.
Smallpox
vaccine?
It was something else.
A polio vaccine.
There's a polio vaccine for sure.
Yeah, I guess. There is I don't think I have. Why is smallpox such a deadly thing then? If it's.
Oh,
I don't think smallpox is a deadly thing.
Oh,
no.
no. It's very much a
it's a
extremely deadly disease that is a big concern. Like, the last documented case of it was some worker for one of the government organizations like the CDC accidentally got smallpox because they mishandled the sample that they had at the CDC.
Sort of store chemical, biological weapons.
And that person died pretty quick.
Actually,
quick, but
so one of the studies that says before the settlers from Europe came to America, that maybe 90% of the Indian Native Americans population might have been wiped out from diseases such as smallpox and stuff.
You know what's funny is I almost brought that up like 5 minutes ago. I can't remember what we were talking, but I totally almost brought up that same
Is
thing.
Ebola the new smallpox? Is that going to...
It might be the old smallpox. Hell, which one was first? I have no idea. Ebola or smallpox.